Hello everyone, GMGM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is your Wednesday interview episode, and today I am sitting down with the one and only Ray Chan, also known as 9GAG's CEO. Ray is the founder of 9GAG and now the founder of Memeland. I'm sure you know it. If you are listening to this podcast, I imagine you know Memeland. It is one of the hottest projects around right now. It's got the You the Real MVP collection, the Captain's collection, potatoes. And in this conversation, Ray and I really dig deep on the vision for Memeland in general. We talk a lot about meme token and how he sees that integrating into the collection overall, what products he's trying to build. We also talk about the difference of building an NFT project outside of the United States versus inside the United States, where I think a lot of us are very focused and concerned on the regulatory environment. And Ray is based in Hong Kong and has a very different perspective on things. He also just gives, I think, interesting insight in general about like entrepreneurship culture in Asia, in Hong Kong, and how it differs from maybe in the United States. It was one of my favorite parts of the interview, actually. So a little bit towards the end, especially if you're in the United States, I think it's a really interesting perspective to get. And frankly, he describes how he thinks that he and Memeland have an advantage that isn't necessarily spoken about or isn't necessarily obvious to people, but he has an advantage being outside of the United States and being able to speak to both a US audience and an Asian audience. And then we also talk about some of what Ray feels like they did wrong at times with Memeland and how they learned from that. And it's just an awesome conversation all around. Ray is an amazing founder, an amazing thinker, such a joy to chat with. So I think you guys are going to love this conversation. Before we dive into it, a couple of notes. One, by the time you are listening to this, I am going to be in Miami. I'm flying to Miami tomorrow for our very first OPJ Live event, which is happening this Thursday night. If you're an OPJ NFT holder or a Doodles holder, you can still go on to opjtour.com, scroll down to the Miami event and register to attend, to come hang out with Julian, Holguin, and I. I cannot wait. It's going to be so much fun. And we also had our most recent edition of Overpriced JPEGs Pro come out today as I record this, which is Tuesday. We did a deep dive on NFT gaming. I think while the market overall is down, NFT games and blockchain games are really starting to have momentum and are nearing a pop moment, in my opinion. So we break down what projects we're looking at. I have some awesome members of my team who are deep into gaming, so we really leaned on them to talk about what are the NFT gaming projects that they're eyeing, what are the gaming tokens that they're eyeing, and also just to give you a general lay of the land in terms of what's happening right now with NFT gaming. So that is our latest Overpriced JPEGs Pro newsletter. You can go subscribe to the newsletter below in the links below. And all right, with that, we need to hear a word from our lovely sponsors and then on to the conversation with Ray Chan. I am so excited to announce that this year, Overpriced JPEGs has partnered with OPENSEA, the world's leading NFT marketplace built for everyone, creators, collectors, noobs, and experts alike. I'm an OPENSEA user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the ecosystem, supporting 8 chains and 8 global languages. I trust the systems they've put in place to keep the space safe, like copyright protection, malicious URL detection and removal, robust verification, and more. It's why they are the place to buy, sell, and create NFTs. That's right. You know OPENSEA, you use OPENSEA, but did you know that OPENSEA now has drops? New exclusive projects launch every week from top projects and creators, and you can check them out now using the link in the show notes. They also recently introduced self-serve drops, which is in beta, and allows creators to launch their projects right on OPENSEA. This drops product gives creators access to tools like rich storytelling drop pages, multi-chain support, and drop mechanic customization. The full launch for self-serve drops is coming this spring. So check out the upcoming drops on OPENSEA right now using the link in the show notes and own what moves you. You'll also be supporting the show in the process. Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about, Web3 Sense. A Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3 Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities community's token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3 Sense has data that you want to see with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3 Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. Ray, welcome to Overpriced JPEGs, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I feel like I need to call you 9GAG's CEO. I feel like that, that's how I see you on Twitter. And so it's like always takes my brain a minute to remember that your name is Ray.
Yeah, Ray is better. 9GAG's CEO sounds a little bit too arrogant. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't mind it. You are the CEO. You've built this amazing platform, an amazing company. So I think it's not bragging if you can do it, I want to start with a tweet from, I think, our mutual friend, Luca Netz, the Pudgy Penguins CEO. He tweeted recently that you and he spoke and that very few people in this industry, presumably like Web3, get it, and that you are one of the few people who really gets it. What does that mean? What do you think you get?
First of all, I think thanks Luca, right, for his kind words. I think get it. I think I only think that it only means that understand. I mean, it's more like not fucking up, right? I think that's what get it means, right? And the key is we have to keep trying to get it, right? Because Web3 changes so quickly, right? But jokes aside, I think what Luca means is actually understand how to build community, right, together, and then also how to build business with the community together. I think that's what he means. Yeah, but better ask him. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair interpretation. The other place my brain went with this is I think Luca's gift is around social media and the culture of social media and the culture of Web3 to some extent, by extension. And I imagine that's also part of this. Like, you understand internet culture and have understood internet culture for a very long time. And that automatically gives you a certain leg up in terms of understanding Web3 culture. Do you agree with that?
I think there's no way to really understand internet culture. It's more like we can keep trying to understanding it, right? Because it's more about how we can keep ourselves updated. Right? Because I think internet culture it also evolves, right? For example, in the past, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when we first started 9GAG, right? Meme was like a very insider jokes, that kind of thing. Right now, everyone talks about meme, right? And meme has become very mainstream. So basically, it keeps changing, right? So for us, it's more about how we can keep ourselves updated and not trying to despise any new stuff. Okay, TikTok sounds very stupid, right? Okay, Web3 NFT sounds very stupid, right? We try to avoid that so that we don't get obsolete just because we get older. Yeah, because I think getting older, people say that, okay, usually we get wiser, right? But the thing is, we also kind of like get pretty inflexible. Because we feel like ourselves that, oh, we have seen that, we have done that, right? And that's why this is the thing that how we can keep ourselves young at heart, at least, right? I think that's the key. Yeah.
I want to push back and almost argue that even if memes were not mainstream 15 years ago, they've always been internet culture. Like, to me, internet culture is, throughout time, has always been somewhat irreverent, and I guess that's almost the word I would use above all else, is like irreverent and sort of organic and emergent. And it's always had a particular tone, but I could be wrong because I was not in like the early days of the internet. But that's my impression, is that in some ways there is a certain continuity to the way to internet culture. It's just gone broader and like more people have entered internet culture. Am I wrong?
Not wrong, right? I think internet culture is part of culture. Right? It's almost like, okay, it usually starts very small, right? And then it touches on more people. and then it started to become like a more viral, more global, right? I think it's always like that, like in the past, like hip hop, right? And maybe right now NFT and crypto, or maybe AI, right? I think it's always like that. You need a small group of people who are crazy enough to think that, okay, this is the thing, and I really love to work on it. And then they keep working on it and make it great. And then more people will start to adopt it. And then more and more people will start to get on board. I think it's almost always like that, right? That's why I think even back in the days when Apple and Microsoft were still like startups, right? I think they were that kind of are very passionate people, geeks and nerds, right? They try to work on something new, right? I think it's almost always like that. I think either in music or in movies or internet, right? Or memes or social media. I think it's almost always like that. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about building community and building businesses. If that's the secret sauce, if that's the thing you get. I want to go back to the very first NFT project you launched, which was You the Real MVP. And you launched that, I think it was 5.3 ETH was the mint price for that. Do I have that correct?
Yes. Yeah, correct.
And y'all were
yeah.
initially shooting for 300 to mint 300. You ended up minting 200. And then you put the remaining 100 in the treasury for You the Real MVP holders, I guess, or you put it kind of you give it back to the community essentially for giveaways and things. I heard you call that the best move y'all had made. Now, you were saying this at the end of last year, so I want to find out if there's an update to that, if you feel like you've made a move since then that was even better. But walk us through why that was a good move and how that maybe ties into just how you approach community building.
I think because we are not very early in NFT. I mean, we are still very early in general, right? But in NFT, at least in this wave of NFT, we are not very early. Yeah, that's why we have the luxury to kind of like learn from different projects, right? For example, like Proof, like Admit One, or other bigger projects like Board A or Asuki, Moonbergs, right? I think that's the good things about starting late, right? And for us, we think that, okay, launching a small community first, I think it makes sense because first of all, the people, you can actually talk to all of them, all of the holders, right? That's number one. Number two is if you can set a price that is set by themselves, then maybe they're willing to pay and hold for a longer time. Right. Indeed, when you talk about, okay, the mean price is like 5.3 ETH, it sounds so crazy, right? Because these days, even if you mean at 0.25 or even 0.5, right? People call you cash grab, right? So at the time when and it was launched at 5.3 ETH, I think it showed that how naive we were, right? And the price was not set by us. It's actually a blind auction price we get after asking our community on Discord. Yeah. And turns out the price was actually too high. Yeah, because first of all, we didn't sell out, right? Second of all, that was the time right after Luna and UST crash. Yeah, so the sentiment was bad. People feel like, okay, this is like the end of crypto, right? And but luckily, I think there are always some crazy people trying to support new projects and stuff. Yeah, maybe they were just degen. Maybe they understand what 9GAG is. Maybe they understand our potential. But at least we sold like 200 of them, and then we started to build with our MVP and try to understand more what NFT about, what NFT community is about. Yeah, so I mean, at least we didn't die, right? So it's probably a good thing. Yeah, and because we didn't really mint out, we didn't really sell out, so we have a treasury of quite a lot of our MVP NFT. Then when we launch the potatoes, our next project of 3 mints, we have some prize draw and raffle and stuff like that. And MVP is indeed a prize, gifts that we can give away for free. Yeah, and it's still valuable to our holders. Yeah, so yeah, turns out we turned the misfortune, become part of the fortune.
I think that's so striking and such an important story because there is at times a belief in this space that if you don't mint out, you lose the momentum and you're dead. You didn't mint out. How did you crawl out from that hole to become one of the most successful projects out there right now with that original core group of 200 holders?
I think it's when you put it this way, right, it kind of reminds me of Bored Ape and also D-Gods, right? I think for BAYC, I think at the early time, I think I heard a lot of the OGs. They mentioned that they when Bored Ape was launched, right? They have to call people. Okay, can you mean, right? Can you mean 500 of them, 400 of them, right? And then that's kind of how things started, right? And also for D-Gods, right? I also listened to friends' podcasts mentioning that when D-Gods was launched, and then they kind of like fuck up with the launch and then the artwork, and then people think that they're dying and stuff like that, right? So when you put it this way, I feel like, maybe having a hiccup at launch, maybe this is a good thing because somehow it humbles you, right? Because it makes you know that, you don't actually know how to make NFT and know how to build a community, right? But back to our case, I think that is like a wake-up call for us because we always feel like, we are 9GAG, right? We got like 200 million audience across Facebook, website, apps, and stuff like that, right? But that moment has actually taught us that, no matter how big we are on Web 2, Web 3 is another world. We have to kind of like start from scratch. And that makes us spend more time and more resources to learn how to actually build an NFT community. I think that's number one. Number two is, I think, probably because we didn't need the money back then anyway, right? So that, whether we get the meme fund or not, we continue to build. Yeah, I think if we get more ETH, I think that's good, right? But even if we didn't get the amount that we need or we want, right, I think it's also good because somehow it kind of like reshape our whole thinking towards our strategy as well. Yeah, I think for Memeland, for 9GAG, we are at a pretty, we have the luxury to do that. Yeah, because we didn't need the money to build. Yeah, and I think that's kind of like all things in life, right? When you don't need a boyfriend, probably that's the time that there are so many people that will try to get you, right? And same case for fundraising and stuff, right? Raise funding at the moment that you don't need them, right? I think those are the things that is kind of the contradictory things in life, which is kind of interesting, but also pretty true. Yeah.
My sense of part of your rise, and I want to get your reaction to this, because I remember when potatoes came out and I was sort of tracking potatoes, but I wasn't kind of grasping the whole ecosystem and the end game, which I really want to talk to because I still think I have some questions around that. But
me too.
I'm figuring. I was like, I'm sure you're going to be like, we're emerging, we're figuring it out as it goes, which is what you're very strong at. But it was a lot of giveaways and was a lot of incentives around giving away other NFTs, giving away iPods or iPhones, I guess, giving away things with real value as a way to draw attention to the community. How central was that to your, call it, comeback story or your come-uppance story?
I think that part is quite important, right? I think one of the experience that we had when we are running 9GAG, working with different business partners, right? The best way to get attention is to give out free shit on the internet. Right? We work with OnePlus, right? What's the better way to promote OnePlus, right? The iPhone, the phone brand, right? Give away some phones, right? Work with some hotel groups. What's the better way, right? Instead of a very creative ads, basically, if you give away freebies, free shit, right, you get more attention, you get more engagement. Because at the end of the day, no matter how creative your ad is, people still want free stuff. Yeah, more than, look at the good ad and then share it, right? So that's why when we launch MVP and then the potatoes, right, the whole thinking behind was, first of all, I think when we launched the MVP, that was part of our plan that, we just put all the means fund that we get, right, back to the project itself as the marketing, right? It's almost like when you launch a e-commerce business, right? The first year, you don't, even if you don't make money, even if you break even, it's a win already, right? That's how we think about when we first started. Yeah, that's why when we launched potatoes as a free means, that was a time when I think 1 month after Goblin Town was launched, free means was still a thing, right? And somehow we just do the things that we know that it will work. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, people online, whether you're rich, whether you're so-called poor, right? You still love free shit, right? That's why we have that as part of the engagement plan. Yeah. So it's quite important. Yeah.
I feel like I could see you guys thinking that through in real time when you shifted to potatoes. It seemed like that was a shift because you had planned to do another paid mint, and then you could see that y'all were pivoting. And I think that was an interesting signal for people who were paying attention. And I was, but I still didn't pick up on it properly. Had I been smarter, I would have picked up on it, like of just your mobility and your ability to understand the moment, understand the internet culture or the Web3 culture in a given instant, and then know how to play to it. I'm curious on the giving stuff away, because that is obviously a great way to get attention, but you don't want to build a community that you've bought, right? That are so expectant of that's the only reason they're there. And then when that runs out, you're done. So how do you feel like you have managed the balance of giving shit away in order to attract an audience and attract attention to yourself, but keeping them engaged?
I think the key is not to just think about give away free stuff, right? The thing is more about how can we create value for our holders. Yeah, but for an NFT project, especially in the early days, especially in a bear market, it's really hard for people to understand your long-term vision. Right? That's why you need to have some short-term benefits for them, whether it's like a giveaway or whether it's like a free job or whether it's like some utility. Right? You have to keep their attention, because without short-term, there's no long-term. Right? I think how we can balance both out. On one hand, we have to have a long-term vision. On the other hand, we also have to know how we can keep people's attention in the short term. I think that's almost like art and science combined. Because on one hand, you can look at the data, right? Because the good thing about Web3 is it's whether your practice, whether your policy, whether your new things works. Basically, you can see it from the price movement, right? You can see it from the community's response. Yeah, so I think that part is relatively like science, right? But for the art part, it's more about if this works, because you need to have the empathy as a holder to understand whether they care about it or not, right? I think I see, a lot of NFT projects as a holder, right? So I see kind of like, okay, the team thinks that this is like cool shit, right? But turns out the holder doesn't care, right? So I feel like this is like the lesson that I learned personally after buying and holding so many overpriced JPEGs, right? I think that's how we can start to learn more. I think at the end of the day, NFT itself is a cool tag, right? But the how can we apply it to product building, to community building? It's like still a very short time. That's why, and it's almost like social media, in the sense that every project is basically building in public. So you can learn from them as long as you get into their community, right? If you just stand outside, right? Of course, you don't know how it works. But if you are a Bored Ape holder, right? If you are an Kaiju Kings or a Kata Cat Gang holder, right? You understand what they do well. You understand what they didn't do well. And in that way, we can also learn from them pretty quickly. Yeah.
I'm excited to get into all that, like what you feel like have been your big learnings, and then really getting into the present day and the meme token and everything. But I want to spend one more minute a little bit in the past, which is to ask, you talk about balancing short-term vision and long-term vision. What was your long-term vision when you started this, which really wasn't that long ago, but I imagine it's changed a lot just in the period of time you've been in this. What was the long-term vision when you got into NFTs?
No, indeed, the long-term vision didn't change at all. Right? Okay. Because I feel like there are always two types of entrepreneurs, two types of founders, right? Number one is basically they know what they want to build. Yeah? That's why they keep working on trying different ways to execute, to realize that vision, right? It was like one example that I had in mind is I read the founding stories of Foursquare. I don't know whether people still use it nowadays, right? But Dennis Crowley, right? Yeah. He started Foursquare, but before that, he started an app called Dodgeball, right? It's all geolocation based related. It's all about mobile, all about location based business, right? He always believed that ads and data, right? The geographical data, I think it's important to business, right? That's why he always work on that. But depending on the technology, depending on the team that you have, then you build different stuff to try to execute the same vision, right? That's number one. Number two is kind of like, okay, I don't know what I really want to solve, but I think this is fun, right? And then I just build it and then continue to build it, and then it makes become bigger, right? So that was kind of like a Facebook when it was first started, right? So I feel like for us, when we work on 9GAG, we are kind of like, okay, we are just lucky. We're just having fun, right? And then when we are working on Memeland, we kind of know what we want to build, because after working on social media or community-based product for like 15 years, we feel like, okay, the business model didn't really work very well because it's like app-based, and the incentives for the audience, for the advertiser, for the platform, for the creators, right? They don't really align, right? That's why we feel like, okay, Web3, it seems very interesting because you can actually build with the community and you don't have to rely on ads, because somehow it's like back to Web 1 that, okay, you just sell a product, right? Instead of relying on other people to pay for the product and then other people use it for free. So somehow we want to, the company mission for Memeland is, we want to bring ownership to the community, right? Because when the community actually owns the product, right, then they can help make decision. They can enjoy the growth. Yeah, that's always our vision when we first started Memeland. And practically, we also know that it's almost close to impossible to win over like Facebook or TikTok in Web 2, right? Because they're so big and there's network effect, right? But meanwhile, in Web 3, this is like a new I would say, new area. This is like a Wild Wild West. In that case, maybe we have a chance to win, because somehow all those big companies, they are so big. So in order for them to launch a token, in order for them to kind of like change the business model, it's also close to impossible. Yeah, that's why we feel like, okay, practically in Web3, maybe we can do social media stuff, we can do community stuff, right? And have a chance to become the leader in it, right? So the long-term vision didn't change at all, even like after a year, after working on Memeland, yeah.
Well, and I want to talk about maybe the then shorter to midterm things like GMGM and holders.com and what you've got going on there. But while we're talking about this long-term vision, what I hear you saying is, I'm going to make a leap to meme here, right? You're trying to build a platform, a set of platforms, a set of products that the community has ownership in through, I'm assuming, the meme token specifically. Is that right?
Yeah, and also I think it is evolved around, it's related to, I mean, meme token is only a way to kind of like link all the platforms and people up, right? Because it's almost like in a society. What links people up, right? Of course, some people say that love, right? But I would say that money, right? Because that's the thing that people understand. Whatever the culture you are in, right? You still have money, all forms of money. Maybe it's Bitcoin, maybe it's Ethereum, maybe it's gold, right? Maybe it's like Shell, right? Something like that. But I think people understand that, and that's why if we really want to build an ecosystem, we need to, or we should have kind of like a token or a form of money, right? As the medium of exchange. I think that's something that we want a meme to become like the currency for creator economy.
So spell out this vision for us, like in as much specificity as you can right now give us.
Basically, it's pretty straightforward, right? For us, we always kind of like mention that to our holders, right? We have a 3-course meal for our Web3 dinner, right? Or Web3 meal, right? Our Web3 strategy is a 3-course meal. Yeah, let's put it this way.
You have a good tweet about that. I think it's your pinned tweet, right?
Yes, it's our pinned tweet on the Memeland Twitter, right? NFTs for community building, right? Because, okay, we share the same PFP, we are in the same Discord, right? We are in the same token-gated community, right? I think it is a very good tool to build community because people feel that they belong, right? NFT is for community. And then the token itself is for decentralized and also for value creation, because not everyone is able to buy your expensive JPEGs, right? Yeah, but if you have like $4, $5, right, you can buy an ApeCoin, right? If you have like it depends on how much money you have, right? You can still be part of the ecosystem if you own part of the token, right? For example, if you want to understand more about cryptocurrency right now, you can just buy some ETH, right? You don't even have to buy one ETH, right? You can just buy 0.0069 ETH, something like that, right? Yeah, so I think that part is important because it helps to decentralize and create value, right? And then the last part is, okay, right now with the token, what does it do, right? That's why we need to build products or need to encourage people to build products, right, for the application of the tokens, right? That's what we always think about when we think about our so-called Web3 strategy, right? And that's what we are building right now. Yeah, but there are so many aspects in business that we can work on, right? For example, when you look at Bitcoin, when you look at Ethereum, right, they have their own focus, right? Meanwhile, maybe Ethereum is more like pretty general, right? But for us, we don't want to touch on very financial related stuff, right? On one hand, it's the government, the stuff like that. On the other hand, it's because we don't know, right? But for creator economy, for attention economy, for social media, for creators, we have been working on that for like 15 years. That's the thing that we want to work on. Because I'm a big believer in Warren Buffett's saying of circle of competence, right? You don't have to know everything, right? You just have to work on the things that you know and become really, really good at it. And for creators, it's kind of like our
your bread and butter. That's your core competence.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm very interested in this proposed new world, or as far as I see it, like a proposed new world, in which exit liquidity is no longer an acquisition moment, but it's a token launch, or it's the issuance of new tokens, or like, is that what you're going for here? Like, I like from a corporate structure perspective, when we talk about decentralization, we talk about community ownership. Practically, what does that look like? And I think it's really interesting to see. I think you see this core breakdown in the OpenSea versus Blur dynamic that you have at play. You have OpenSea, which is a much more traditionally structured company, who I believe is, would like to go public someday and have a very traditional kind of exit, and Blur, which seems, and their VCs, who seem to be almost maybe unconcerned with that, because the real liquidity moment for all of the VCs and for the Blur investors is really the token launch. And so where do you see Memeland and this token falling within that divide?
It depends on whose exit, right? I mean, maybe for investors, right? Maybe that's the difference, like IPO versus like token launch, right? But I think for the founding team, right, for the founders, actually, it doesn't change at all, right? Because, I mean, if you want to build something bigger, right, you can't exit. Yeah, I think that part doesn't really change that much. I mean, we are lucky in the sense that we have built 9GAG, and then we are 9GAG is profitable. I think we have a decent living, right, and stuff like that. Right? That's why for us, it's not just about making money. I think it's more about creating impact in some way. Because at the end of the day, you don't really need that much money to live a good life, right? And not to mention, maybe the more money you have, right, you don't seem that happy, right? Sometimes. I think there's a threshold that you need, right, to live happily, right? But somehow, I think for us, we haven't really thought about that much about exit and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, even for 9GAG, right, working on it for so long time, we haven't even exited, right? We couldn't, and we haven't, right? I think both, yeah. But somehow, I just feel like maybe the best way is to continue to build, because I think Web3, after working on it for a year, is actually very fascinating, because it's fun to build in public. And it's also very challenging. It almost gives you a sense of, okay, you are actually playing computer games, right? Where there will always be the next level, right? Okay, after the launch, right? Okay, your floor price become like 1 ETH, right? And then people expect it to become 3 ETH and then 5 ETH, right? Then how can you actually create value when you only get 0% royalty these days, and then you only get like mean prices like 1 ETH mean price. But people expected, when the floor price is like 5 ETH, you have to create value for people that bought in at 5 ETH, because when they bought at 5 ETH, they actually expect it to go to 10 ETH, right? I think that is like very challenging. And
the MVP floor price right now is 40 ETH. I mean, does that make you nervous?
Right? Not nervous at all, right? Because to be honest, right, I think we didn't set the price. It's just like market supply and demand. Yeah, but we are also very mindful of the price in the sense that we understand that there is actual money involved, and people use their hard-earned money, right, to buy your, again, overpriced JPEG, right? Yeah. So I think that part, it doesn't give us it doesn't make us nervous, but more about how can we be creative to create value for those people, right? Can we make an NFT one day that, okay, it just constantly create value, but people don't care about floor price anymore, right? I mean, but somehow I think it's very weird in a way that you don't really know how it can go and how high it can go, because somehow people also have their own expectation, right? And somehow when we look at other projects, right, in the last year, it can go as high as like the floor price is like 100 ETH, right? But it can also go down back to like 5 ETH, 10 ETH, right? It's like all happening within 1 year. One moment you were blue chips, right? The next moment you are like the public enemy, right? I think that part is scary but also fun at the same time. That's why we always try to see NFT not as a product itself, but more like a way to kind of like build a community. Maybe the actual product should be something not NFT, right? So that you can create much, much bigger value. Because if you ask me, okay, how much money can NFT, how high the price can NFT goes, right? What are the most expensive goods human being ever bought, right? Maybe a supercar, maybe a private jet, maybe a yacht, maybe a Lambo, right? Or maybe a MS handbag, right? But there's still a ceiling for that, right? And the higher the price, the fewer people can buy, right? But if you talk about company building, product building, right? You can get 1 million users, you can get 10 million users, you can get 1 billion users. The value that you create can be like into the billions range. Then in that sense, you can actually bring value back to the holders that bought in at like 40 ETH, right? I'm not saying that this is like stock and stuff like that, but at least in the value sense, it's doable, right? And I think that's the direction that we know that we need to go, right? Because if we always just focus on the NFT, whether you say that there's no utility at all from the get-go, right? People still expect it. You have a utility, right? Look at Goblin Town. Exactly. Talk about, no utility, CC0. But when it pumps up the price and then right now it goes down to below 1 ETH, people still complain, right? But to be honest, for the team themselves, they actually don't have any revenue right now, right? Because of the royalty stuff, right? So I think that part, we always need to see NFT is just a tag, it's just a tool. It's not the end game. Yeah, that's how we see it. Yeah,
absolutely. So up to this point, and it sounds like for the foreseeable future, it's funded through 9GAG profits, right? You guys haven't taken any separate money. Well, I guess the mints, obviously you've minted projects and made money on mints like the Captain's Mint and things, but so a combination of like mint and whatever you are still getting at this point from secondary royalties and 9GAG.
We still have some. This. I think for royalties, we still have some, right?
And you dropped your royalties from 9% to 3% or something like that. You did.
3.33, right? Still add up. It's like 9, right? I think this is also an interesting topic because after buying a lot of NFTs for a year, right? There's a pattern. It's not that every project has a pattern. It's more like because people think that there's a pattern. That's why they follow that pattern. And then it creates the pattern. It's almost like self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, right? Okay, like it's almost like, okay, before review, there will be a pump, and after review, there will be a dump, right? I mean, because people have that kind of theory, and somehow they follow that. That's why it creates that kind of trend and the pattern, right? So for us, I kind of understand that there will be a lot of traders, right, in the beginning of the project, right? I mean, for you, the real MVP, it doesn't matter because the collection is very small, right? And the people who are willing to pay a high price, they actually understand OTC and stuff very easily, right, for them, because they have been doing that in order to be able to pay 5 ETH, right, to mint an NFT, right? And for potatoes, right, we have a high royalty. It's because, okay, this is a free mint. Of course, high royalty is kind of like justified, right? And then for captains, we have a high royalty at the beginning. because we know that people will trade, people will flip, right? Then why don't we just get a more royalty at the beginning so that we can use it to fund some giveaway, maybe some marketing, right? For our community, right? That's why we set it high, right? And the thing is, it's almost like we create a new trick for us to get people's attention, because when your royalty is so high, right? People will complain whether they are in your community or not, or maybe they are just like some so-called critics or NFT influencer, right? Whatever they call themselves, right? And they will just write long threads complaining about, okay, 9GAG, or they are like cash grab, right? They're so greedy and shit like that, right? I mean, even by they talk about you, it's already a win, right? And
all press is good press. That's what you're getting at.
Exactly, right? And to be honest, people are very forgiving and forgetful, right, in NFT in a way that if you can actually make it work and keep your floor price high, I think they will change their mind, right? I think they will change their view as well. And another trick that I see is NFT is very attention driven, right? So what are the tricks that you can get people's attention? I think that part is key. Yeah. And that's why when we have our royalty and then drop it back down to like 3.3%, that's a news event that people will talk about, right? So it saves us one trick. Yeah, it's almost like we need to create more tricks in our pocket so that we can use one when we kind of like getting out of people's attention, out of people's mind, right? I think it's kind of like that for us. But I think this is like a funny experiment, because honestly, we don't know whether it works or not, but somehow the good thing about NFT is because you get the funding in the beginning, right? So you don't really have to worry too much. Yeah, but I think that part is also kind of like a curse, because people always expected that, okay, you get so much money in the beginning anyway, right? So you have to deliver so much in such a short period, right? So, I mean, that part we also have to align or also adjust people, especially our holders' expectation. Yeah.
Y'all know I love Ledger, the world leader in critical digital asset security. When you own crypto, what you actually own is a private key that gives you access to your coins. It is imperative that you keep this key safe, and Ledger wallets are the best way to do that. The Nano S Plus and Nano X Ledger wallets, paired with the Ledger Live app, give you the best way to start your crypto journey while maintaining full control over your digital assets. Send and sign your NFT transactions with full transparency in the Ledger Live app. What you see is what you sign. And y'all have heard me talk about Ledger Stacks before. Well, due to unprecedented demand, Ledger has received all the Ledger Stacks pre-orders that it can fulfill through summer 2023. And so they have decided to pause the pre-orders. Ledger is incredibly grateful for the community's support and is working hard to get current pre-orders out and ready to ship so that they can make even more Ledger Stacks to keep your digital assets secure. Sign up for the Ledger Stacks waitlist and be the first to know when Ledger Stacks are available again for pre-orders. But don't leave your digital assets susceptible to breach or hack in the meantime. Order your Nano S Plus or Nano X today by visiting shop.ledger.com or clicking the link in the show notes. So let's talk about all this, like the products. So you've talked about a couple of them. You've talked about holders.com, which is, you call it TripAdvisor for Web3, and I want to unpack that a bit. You've talked, I think, is GMGM the one that you call OnlyFans for Web3, but you're supposed to keep your clothes on?
It's basically social media, right? I mean, for OnlyFans, on one hand, it's easier to catch people's attention, right? On the other hand, OnlyFans is probably one of the biggest paid social media out there, right? Yeah, so I think it's easier to get people's attention when we use a comparison like that. Yeah.
So let's start there. So what is GMGM? What is your vision for that? And I don't know if you have a timeline on when you think something like that might launch from y'all, but let's start with what it is.
Yeah. Actually, this is interesting, right? Because somehow we kind of like deprioritize GMGM right now, because after understanding more about the need of our holders, right? Somehow we feel like, okay, maybe we need to have a meme token to make it valuable first, and then we launch GMGM, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't just create a token out of nothing and then use that nothing token to reward people, right? I think it's really hard to educate creators in that way, because even if you give them some meme coin, they will just sell it right away because they don't understand the value, right? It's almost like on Twitch, you'll receive like virtual flowers, virtual cars and stuff like that, right? You won't hold the virtual cars or virtual flowers, right? You will just sell it for VR. I think that's the part that, that's one of the reasons why we kind of like deprioritize it. Another reason is, I think that in Web3, it's really hard to kind of like keep your creators in the same platform. Yeah, because it's on blockchain, right? So it's very easy to do a so-called vampire attack, right? To get your creators. Yeah, I think we see that on the NFT marketplaces, right? I mean, there's almost like no loyalty in NFTs, right? Yeah, there's almost like no honor at all, right? I think that's the part why we kind of like deprioritize it. But right now, we are working on two products internally right now. Yeah, number one is continue to be holders.com. Another one is called pfp.com. Right? We bought the domain, fucking expensive, right? We bought the ENS. Yeah, and the thing is, we call it PFP stands for Proof of Fandom Protocol for us. It's inspired by a POAP, a Proof of Fandom Protocol, right? And then, but we try to make it cooler so that we don't like POFAP or something like that, right? That's why we call it PFP, right? But the direction for that is, can we work with existing IPs and brands who kind of want to get into Web3 but don't know what to do because it's so overwhelming for them about Web3, right? Can we just work with existing IP and brands and then create a format for them so that they can easily launch their project and create utility, right, for their existing fans? Yeah, I think that part is very important. Is create NFT for their existing fans. It's not trying to get... Is it
like a marketplace, like a loyalty marketplace almost, where you can go and like easily find the benefits from insert all of these different, your favorite Web3 or your favorite Web2 brands?
Kind of like that. Social media is interesting. It's good, right? Because, okay, there you have how many followers, right? And then you can kind of like, you feel good when you have like 1 million followers, right? But if you ask them to pay, yeah, it's really hard, right? I know that Overpriced JPEG just launched a premium edition, right? And I don't know the conversion rate. I hope it's high, right? But I know that it's really hard because I think people are very cheap ass, right? They enjoy free shit, right? And there's and on the content side, there is so much content anyway, and a lot of them are of high quality. That's why it's really hard to get people to pay. Yeah, but the thing is, if you actually have a core group of fans, they're actually willing to pay. And with blockchain, with NFTs, it's actually very easy to recognize who they are. That's why you can tell, okay, maybe Ray is the biggest fans of Kali, right? Because I own the most Kali NFT, right? And as the creator, you know, okay, those are the guys that you want to reward, because you know that they are your customers, right? They are your biggest supporters, right? They are not just someone that only cheers for you when you give them free shit, right? So I think with blockchain, we can actually help a lot of IPs to build that. And I would say that's the bigger vision for us, and educate the IPs and brands and idol groups and celebrities and stuff like that, right? Because to be honest, I mean, I love Anthony Hopkins, right? But I don't want to buy his NFTs and use that NFT as my profile pic, right? And I love to watch a Kevin Hart's movie, right? But I don't want to own his NFT because I think that 3D NFT is not my cup of tea, right? But if Kevin Hart or Anthony Hopkins, right, or other celebrities, or the best thing is probably K-pop groups, right? If they are willing to give some extra utility to their fans, some experience to their fans, I think tons of their fans would love to support them, right? And I think the price point also matters, right? If you mean at like $1,000, of course people don't buy, right? Because, okay, I love your movies, but I don't really love you that much. Yeah, I think that's a very delicate thing that you have to set. That's why for PFP.com, we want to guide all those IPs and brands in the correct Web3 way so that they don't fuck up, right? Because it's so painful to see so many brands fuck up in Web3, because it gives Web3 a bad name. It also gives all those brands a bad name, yeah.
So how much is this really like a consulting company to start? Because I think about things like Recur, which we're sort of trying to do that with like story IP with Nickelodeon, whatever else they partnered with, and to really mixed results, to put it frankly, like generously. Or I know there are other folks who are working on this specifically within the context of music. So I guess this is a two-part question, which is like, A, do you need to be industry specific to start, or like narrow the focus, or really is it like it could be anywhere from celebrities to brands? That's question one. And then question two is, and then are you really a consulting agency first and foremost, helping these folks do it right?
I think, first of all, I don't want to be a consulting agency, right? Because if you have read the good old books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? You know that become a professional is a bad job. Yeah, because you have to keep working, right? You don't create a system, you don't create a machine that works for you, right? That's why we don't want to become a consultancy, right? Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of brands, they actually want us to give them some advice, right, when they launch, right? But we only have so little time, and we don't really want to make money in that way, right? So I think the better way is actually to create a format, a platform, so that they can use it, right? Because I think to all those existing brands, honestly, they don't really care about Web3 that much, right? To them, it's all business, right? How can you create a platform, a format that they understand enough so that they're willing to try on one hand, but also we also have to kind of like educate them. Okay, even if you want to make money, right, you can't make it so ugly in a way that people hate you, right? And you should not see all the Web3 degens like some stupid fucks that you can just make money off, right? So I think those are the things that we need to teach the brand. Yeah, whether we build a platform or whether we become a consultancy, right? Yeah, but I think that's the first thing. Second thing is for those brands, I think at the end of the day, you need to start from a niche, yeah, because it's easier for you to understand more deeply what they need and what their fans need, right? I think Recur or maybe another app called Vivi, right? They kind of like do something like that, right? But I think the biggest difference is they actually, I understand the team the teams are very strong, right? They also raise quite a lot of funding and stuff, but they are not Web3 enough comparing to me, right? Or comparing to our team, because we're actually degens, right? We actually launched successful NFT projects before we launched the platform, right? I think that's the biggest difference, right? It's almost like, okay, how come Yuga can launch other side, right? So-called GameFi direction, where people still pay attention. It's because they have successful collections before they launch the bigger platform, right? And for us, Memeland is actually that resume, right, to all those brands, right? We can really actually tell them, okay, this is our resume. We actually launch a working collection, have a healthy floor price, have a healthy community, right? And for all those other products, other brands, they don't really have a core, so that you can't really have a group of soldiers, have a group of community to support you at the beginning. And I think that part is actually the hardest part, right? Because, okay, if for example, like Memeland, right? Right now, across all our collections, we have like maybe, let's say, 6,000, 8,000 holders, right? When we launch with an IP, when we launch with existing projects, of course, we will guide them, okay, give us allow list, right? Give us exclusive allow list, right? So that our holders can become like the 20% people who mints their new NFT, right, at a reasonable price, right? But at the same time, the 80% of their new so-called NFT, right, they should sell to the existing fans, right, in a way that to them is like a digital collectibles, right, as per Reddit, how they kind of like coin it, right? Yeah, so I think that's what we want. And somehow, because we bought a lot of, not more like I bought a lot of shit, right? So I understand, okay, I understand from a holder standpoint better than most founders out there. Sorry, I mean, because we are late, because I'm late, that's why I can think more from a buyer, not buyer, think more from a holder or consumer standpoint. Yeah. Meanwhile, if you are like very OG, like the first, the crypto OG or NFT OG, basically you're so bullish about the tech, you kind of like forget that all those normal people, they're actually not as smart as you or as advanced as you, right? So I think that's the benefit of being a normal person, like me.
Before you started talking about the tremendous advantage you have with having a core NFT project that's working, I was going to say, I think maybe the better comp for what you're looking at is more like, I think Forum 3, who's doing like Starbucks loyalty program, who I think will likely go on to try and onboard other brands and have a little bit more of like a platform element to it, and not just, I don't know that for sure, but that's sort of my hunch on all of that. But they also don't have their own NFT or like a core NFT community that they've now grown. To come full circle on this, because this is what I wanted to get to, is then, okay, so then how are you driving this back to benefit your holders? And you really started to get on that at the end there, which is if you build a product that is like brand focused or is onboarding new brands who have something to offer to their own holders, there's a very clear way to then get your own community involved. And do you see that being across both the NFTs and the meme token? Or like, how much of this is sorted out in your head and how much of this is you're going to figure it out as you go? With the last thing I'll say, I know I'm now phrasing this as a very long question, but it was striking to me to hear you say like, well, we tabled GMGM because because we couldn't launch it with a token that has no value, because you can't reward people with a token that isn't worth anything. But it feels like a chicken and an egg problem, right? Like a little bit to like, it's like which comes first in some way. So is this like you'll build this platform first that can drive value back to the meme token, which can then allow you to launch other things because the meme token has value now? Not my most streamlined question of all time, but I was thinking it through in real time.
No, I think, by the way, this is one of the reasons why I love to watch your videos, right, and show, is because you ask, I wouldn't say challenging, but more like thoughtful questions, right?
Thank you.
It's not, I mean, it's prepared, right? But it's also kind of like spontaneous, right? Based on the guest's answer, right? I think that is actually what makes you special in some way, right? Yeah. But anyway, I'm not trying to kind of like I don't know, whatever, right?
Butter me up to avoid the question.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. But the thing is, when I look at it, even when I look at the crypto market right now, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, actually, there are users out there, right? And there are believers out there, right? Meanwhile, for a lot of tokens, for a lot of coins out there, I mean, they talk a lot about how many developers that they have, right? But the vision sounds grand, but they actually don't have users at all, right? For us, even with 9GAG, we don't pride ourselves as a technologist or something like that, right? We actually make use of something and then make it for the public, right? Meme is something like that, right? We basically understand normal people enough because we are one of them, and somehow we have the empathy to build a product for the masses, right? That's kind of like our superpower in some way. Our superpower is because we are normal. I don't know whether this is like superpower. Anyway. Yeah.
You're not exactly normal. I understand your point is that you have like behaved like a normal degen, and so you have a sense of what a normie degen, which is a contradiction in and of itself, is.
Yeah, you put it much better than I do, right? But the key is, how can we actually create usage, right, for the token, right? And I don't know, for example, there are so many tokens out there. They have all kind of a value proposition, right? But after the bear market and stuff, right, somehow you understand that people actually don't care about all your big vision and stuff, right? They care about, whether your token will increase in value, right? And for us, we don't really care about the tech side that much, right? At least not from the beginning, right? But we care about the usage of it, right? Because if no one really use your money, right, your money is not money, right? That's why in our case, we launch a meme token, but what actually does meme do, right? Yeah, should it be only just for speculation and stuff, right? That's not healthy at all. Because I mean, we are pretty practical. I'm Asian, right? So we talk about practical stuff, right? How does it make money, right? I think something like that, right? And then in that sense, it's almost like back to something like when you go to amusement park, right? Or when you play games, right? I think all those currency or even meme coin for us, right? It's kind of like those in-game currency. But this time, we are not playing a game, but we actually see the whole world as part of the game. And then when they want to play our game to support the creators, to support the artists, to support the IPs, they actually can use our so-called virtual token, right? I think that's how we see meme. And that's also safer for us from the legal standpoint that, okay, we are not trying to disrupt the finance industry, right? To us, meme coin is kind of like closer to the virtual currency in a game, right, than actual money, right, like USD or renminbi, right? I think that's how we see it, number one. Number two is we actually can create some very simple tokenomics, right? But we can also create good products where people actually want to use your meme coin, but not just for speculation, but they actually want to use it. Oh, because we launch an NFT with, let's say, a BTS or Blackpink, right? And they only launch it using meme coin, right? Then you have to buy meme coin to do it. And that creates value for meme coin. That creates value for our existing holders, right? And of course, to the existing Blackpink fans, right? And they want to buy their NFT. Of course, they don't have to understand how to buy it from or change it, swap it on Uniswap or buy it on Binance. So they don't have to understand that at all. Because once you use the credit card to buy, we just exchange it, right, with meme coin, and then we just buy it, right? Something like that. I think that's how we see how should link the token and also the product together. And to the end user, to the buyers, right, to the collectors, they don't have to care about the how to buy your token at all. Right? Because, I mean, right now, there's so many solutions out there that, okay, with an email address, with a password, you don't even have to own your wallet, right? Maybe that's not as OG as MetaMask, but from the user standpoint, that makes more sense to them. And at the end of the day, if we see NFT as a tag, not as a category, then we know that this is the way. Yeah. I think this is how we think about that. Yeah.
So when meme, and I don't think you've announced a specific date, and I know you're somewhat opposed to like specific dates. You'll give a general range.
Yeah.
But are there certain things like is it at a certain level, like when the product is XYZ ready, and is the main product you're thinking about the PFP site is like when we feel like we have enough there, that's when we can launch meme, or how is that playing out in your head?
Yeah, I mentioned. It's kind of like a running joke in our communities. Hey, don't announce a day so that there's no delay.
You're never delayed.
Right?
Yeah, you can't be delayed if you don't announce.
I'm not Frank, right? They love to delay, right? And play with, right? Yeah, but I'm not Frank, right? Because I think Frank is very interesting in a way that he knows how to turn shit into gold, right? Yeah. That's Frank's way, right? I think one of the smartest founders that I know.
I was thinking about that. Like everybody's got their different secret sauce, and you made the comparison of like you guys had a sort of snafus at your launch. So did Apes. So did 9GAG's. And I think the way each of you had your comeback was actually a little different. And I think Frank is very cult of personality, right? And Frank himself is like this force of personality and cool that makes everything he touches feel cool, you know? And I think that's different than Bored Apes, and I would say somewhat different than how you guys have played it. I mean, I think all of you have cult of personalities, especially now that the projects have done well.
For us, I try not to do that, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, I kind of understand that if you have a lot of fanboys, basically they will become haters, right? When they sell.
That your whatever it is will become your mob. I forget. There's some expression that I'm searching.
Yeah. That's something that we try to avoid. That's why we always try to just call bullshit when it's actually bullshit, right? I mean, we play well with other projects, right? But to our community, we actually tell them what we want and what we think. Because comparing to other projects, right? We are one of the few project founders that actually have built a successful business before, right, and still continue to running it, right? And I think we have built a business that is like on a global scale, not just we launch a small e-commerce stuff, right? It's not like that, right? So for us, we are actually more experienced than most of our holders, right? Because to them, I'm like a lawyer, right? So that I feel like I can talk about how you should run your business, right? But for us, we are actually running entrepreneurs, right? So we can actually share a lot of lessons learned and tell them, what you think, maybe it makes sense in the short term, but it doesn't make sense in the long term, right? And I think we kind of have the trust right now, and that's the so-called personality that I want to build, because I want people to like me, not because they like me, right? I want them to like our business philosophy, right? They like the way that we build product. We think about NFT, we think about community. I think that's better. Because at the end of the day, if they only like the person, right? What if the person dies, right? Then it actually creates a lot of the
you mentioned
risk, right?
Our paid newsletter earlier, which we printed our OPJ index. We ranked the top projects. Memeland did very well, in case you were wondering. I won't say exactly what we ranked you, but you guys scored quite highly. But we talked about like why we're bullish on projects, and then for all the projects also what makes us hesitant. And a big one across a number of these is the keyman risk. Like I notoriously love VFriends, but like you lose Gary, man, and like that thing goes into the ground. You know, like it's so dependent heavily on him. And I would say you guys are early enough that it's very dependent on you. You know, if something happened to you, it would be pretty devastating to the Memeland community. But it is a little bit less tied, you know, like I think you've got a system in place. You have an entire team. You have, to your point, an entire global organization that you have instilled a set of like values and ways of thinking and, you know, ways of operating into that could continue to function. I mean, Gary has that too with Vayner, but you get the point.
Yeah, I think for us, right, the reason why I started 9GAG's CEO instead of my personal account is it's like POTUS, right? It's like, there's another guy, as long as he doesn't show up, right, or she doesn't show up, right, no one knows Ray dies, right? Yeah, I think it's something that I kind of had that in mind. It's due to my personal experience with death and of a family member, right? But somehow I always feel like if you are a good founder, you have to, the one of the primary goals for you is to remove yourself from the business, and that business can still work, right? I think that would be a good business, right? I mean, people always kind of like see Steve Jobs as like the cult leader, all right? But after Steve Jobs passed away, Apple's actually has done really, really well, right? I mean, people have all kind of comments, but actually he has built.
I mean, in terms of printing money, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but somehow when you can print money, right, you have the money to do a lot of R&D, to do some experiment that people can't try or don't dare to try, right? That's why I think, if a company can print money, right, actually they can be more innovative if they want, right? But anyway, that's another story. But to us, I think I forgot the main question. But to us, the key is how can we continue to build, right? But somehow can remove Ray, right? Remove the 9GAG CEO from the success formula. I think that's the key. That's why for meme token, for our social fi products, right? Actually, with or without me, it should still work, right? And those are the things that we want people to believe in. Instead of, they just believe in me. I mean, at the beginning, it's needed, right? But somehow, because I think NFT is very funny, because on blockchain, we talk about trustless all the time, but somehow you need the most trust because you ask people to believe in you before you even deliver.
Right.
Ethereum is kind of like that. All kind of tokens are like that. All kind of NFT projects are like that, right? And somehow that's the contradictory stuff, conflicting philosophy in the same thing as well, right? Because at the end of the day, you want people to believe in you, to trust you, but somehow you want to build a trusted system. Yeah, but somehow imagine if Vitalik died, right? In the beginning of Ethereum, probably it would die, right? So somehow I think that's always an interesting balance to find. But I feel like the best way to see NFT is, okay, you have so-called frontman, right, at the front to shit post on Twitter, right, to go to podcasts, to go to spaces, to go to interview, right, to show up, right. I think you need that element. But at the back, you need a good team to keep building stuff, right. I think Frank has Kevin, right, at the back to build all the products that they are building, right. I think Luca, he probably has a team as well to build out all the Pudgy Penguin stuff, right. So I mean for us, it's also like that, right? I'm only like the guy to talk bullshit, right? But actually, there are people building real shit, right, at the back. I think those are the things that we want to do. And to be honest, I mean, that's also one difference, which is like whether you want to become an influencer or whether you want to become a successful founder, right? I talk not because I want to become famous, right? I don't even use social media that much before launching our projects, right? Because to me, social media is always just a tool for communication, for building business, right? But after buying NFTs, I know that I have to put myself out, even though my English sucks, even though I'm not super handsome as Frank or Luca, right? or Gordon Garner, right? But somehow I have to be there because with a face, it's easier for people to trust you, right? And I think those are the things that we understand that we need to do. But I think what people don't see is you can't just relying on the co-leader stuff. You actually have to deliver because the co will wear away because we are not like a religion, something that you can't really prove or disprove very easily, right? Because at the end of the day, you mentioned that you want to build something. You actually have to deliver, right? In NFT, I think those are the things that most people don't understand. That's why when the bear market hits, so many projects kind of like failing. It's just because, okay, on one hand, they didn't, they were not prudent enough in building the business, right? And maybe they didn't know how to manage the treasury and stuff like that. And on the other hand, it's because probably they didn't really have a strong team at the back to continue building, right? Even though the market is bad. Right. And to be honest, for us, after running our own company for over a decade, we understand that there's economic cycles, right? So we are always kind of like prudent, right? And we make sure that we have enough money to build for 2 years. That's also why we explained our mean price when we meet the captains in January, right? I mean, people laugh at it, and people think that, okay, you just bullshit and stuff, right? But we actually have that kind of financial planning when we meet, right? I think that what we said was, okay, at the time, Ethereum was like $1,200, right? $1,200, right? And then we say that, okay, even if Ethereum drop 50%, we still have enough money to hire a 30 to 40 person team to build out what we want to build, right? And if Ethereum goes up, right, of course, we have more resources to build. I think those are the things that normal NFT founders, they don't think about, they don't talk about. But when you, for example, for us, right, when I talk to Luca, right, and when I listen to Frank, I know that they actually think about those at all, right? Although they are like a co-leader at the front, but they're actually a builder at the back as well. I think those are the ththings that make the difference, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, this is a longer tangent, so I know we don't have time to fully go down it, but when you and I spoke last time, you were making just interesting distinctions between like the US entrepreneurship market and the Chinese entrepreneurship market, or maybe call it the Asian entrepreneurship market. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that. And maybe because we are short on time, like just specifically in the context, even of how you see NFTs playing out, like your holder base, do you know geographically where they're primarily based? Do you see a difference in the way like Asian audiences are interacting with NFTs relative to a Western audience, or like, you know, making that compare and contrast, I think would be really interesting for folks.
I think there are two parts of your questions, right? Number one is our holder base, right? Number two is entrepreneurship in the East and the West, right? I mean, let's talk about our holders first. I think we are quite global. We have a lot of holders in Asia, right? But we also have a lot of holders in the West, right? Yeah. I think on one hand, it's because of 9GAG, we are pretty global, right? That's why people who know 9GAG, they probably have more trust in Memeland in the beginning, right? I think that's why. I think on the other hand is probably because our positioning is not super American, right? That's why we can talk about token, we can talk about social fi products, right? I mean, for us, because we always kind of like think about NFT as a tech, as a way to crowdfunding, as a way to decentralize value, right? So in that sense, it kind of like forces us to talk in a narrative that people outside of the US will understand. Because I think, yeah, you are American, right? But somehow I think the good and bad thing about American entrepreneurs or projects is because it's so easy for them to make money, right? That's why they're kind of like lazy in their vision, right? Yeah, I think it's kind of like that. I mean, in Web 2, I think it's the same in Web 3 as well. Yeah.
Why is it so easy because of our VC markets? Like what makes it so easy why is it easier for Americans?
I think it's definitely the venture capital, right? It's probably the fundraising, right? Because look at all the NFT projects that raise huge amount of funding, right? All US based, right? Because US investors, right, especially tech investors, somehow they understand, oh, this is like a money ball, right? I just have to invest enough, and then just one of them become the next whatever, right? Uber or Yuga, right? Maybe we have to change it, Memeland, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Basically,
well, and they also
right?
there's this weird dynamic now of you have these earlier liquidity events too, because so many of these projects
Yes.
launch a token, and so you have this interesting VC
Yes.
calculation that's going.
Yeah.
Well, I can get fast liquidity as well. I don't even have to wait the 7-year cycle or whatever. But that's a separate conversation. That's
Yeah,
sort of
I think that's why
saying,
a token sale makes more sense for the investors as well, right? Because they can exit earlier, right? It's not like, okay, we have to wait for you to IPO and stuff, right? I mean, but that's another story. But the thing is, when you can raise funding relatively easily, right? You probably don't spend too much time in your community, right? I think that's a good and bad thing, right? That's why you see a lot of people complaining that, okay, after raising funding, you kind of like see the community as a consumer or something like that, right? I mean, I think that's bullshit, but somehow that's kind of true in a way that how you prioritize your to-dos, right? I think that's the part about the community, because we are not based in the US, and somehow our narrative, our thinking is always kind of like, okay, we have to make it work by ourselves instead of relying on raising funding. And because we have that kind of vibe, we probably attract certain kind of holders as well. Yeah, I think that's part on the community, on the holder side. But meanwhile, for the East and West, I think it's also relevant in the sense that because we kind of understand we have to make it more like a business, right? That's why from the get-go, we don't mind talking about token. We don't mind talking about the so-called floor price and stuff, right? Because we are very practical, right? We are a dreamer, but we are also very practical in a way that we understand people buy NFT. 90% of them is not because of the artwork, right? It's because they see that as a way to make money, right? And I think how can you understand that on one hand, but also educate them to become like the collector, to become the supporter, right? On the other hand, I think that part is kind of different, right? Because I see a lot of US projects, they are so philosophical, they are so idealistic in a way that, hey, we say that there's no utility, right? Why do you complain, right? But that's kind of bullshit, right? But somehow, if you only believe that there's no utility, why do you have to make it NFT, right? I think you can just launch 10,000 JPEGs, right, without selling it or something like that, giveaway, something like that. I mean, you can still do it. That's why I think for I would say Asian entrepreneur, somehow we are more practical and we try to make products, right, to really build a business, right? I mean, I'm talking about the good ones, right, not the rug pull ones. Right? I think those guys are shit, right? And they give a bad name to Web3. But somehow, I just feel like that. I think it's the family education, right? Mm-hmm. I guess you probably have a lot of Asian friends and stuff like that, right? But somehow, when the style of parenting, right, it's very different, right? Yeah, basically, hey, there's no use, right? Why don't you get an A, right? I think that kind of mindset, I think it's kind of like implanted in a lot of entrepreneurs, because if the entrepreneurs kind of like make it, right, probably they are the smart guys in some sense, right? Then they probably will have their own way of philosophy to survive, especially in a global market. That's why when you look at a lot of Asian founders, right, somehow who kind of like build a global business, you kind of see that they, on one hand, they have the hardworking mentality of Asian, right? But on the other hand, they also know marketing and stuff, right? I think those are the things that's kind of interesting. That's why. And at the same time, right, the first thing that you didn't touch on, because you asked me about the founder, the entrepreneur, also the holders, right? But one thing that I want to touch on is the macro, right?
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask that. Go ahead.
Basically, you can see that the driving force, whether it's like Web 2 or Web 3, is basically from Asia, right? Because there's fast growth in Asia. There are so many new rich people that being made of all kind of business, right? And the growth is so fascinating that most of the US company, when you look at the financial report, the growth doesn't come from USA, right? The growth comes from Asia, right? When you look at all those luxurious brands, the biggest market is in China. The biggest market is in Asia, right? I think almost in Web3 is kind of like that. Right? Because this is like a running joke among some friends is, do you know why Asians love crypto, right? Because the currency in their country are shitcoin anyway, right? So in that sense, they kind of like get used to it and they are willing to take more risks. They are also willing to kind of like reinvest their money, because once you make money, by taking risks, you're willing to take more risks, right? I think those, not to mention Chinese, right, love gambling, right? I think that's another story. But somehow you can see that the driving force of crypto is probably from Asia, right? And you see a lot of names, Asian names and stuff like that, right? And those are the things that is kind of interesting because I see a lot of US-based projects. They are doing their business development in Asia as well, right? For example, I'm in a talk with the head of growth at Pudgy Penguins, right? Basically, they want to focus part of their marketing, right, on Asia as well, right? And I think when you look at the holders of DGAS and Bored Ape, right, tons of Asians, right? I mean, that's how interesting it is because in the past, not basing your company in the US is actually a disadvantage, right? But on Web3, maybe it finally become an advantage. Yeah.
Who are you more worried about regulatorily, right? Because I'm feeling very negative and fearful about the US. I think they're clearly coming for crypto. I think they clearly want to shut the US out of the crypto market globally. It feels like they're going to, call all of this a security. But I think some of that stems from a desire for more centralized government control. And when I think about that, I'm like, well, I think the Chinese government is even more interested in centralized control than the US government is. Like, where do you fall in terms of your fears around the regulation?
I think all government wants control, right? Yeah. The purpose of a government is control, right? I mean, whether it's like US, right, I think it's still control. It just depends on what's your philosophy, right? And why, right? Do you have to control people, right? Yeah. But somehow, for me, it's less about the government itself, but more about the relationship between the governments, right? US is the leader in the fiat world because most businesses, right? They do business, they settle in US dollars, right? That's why anything related to crypto is kind of like disrupting their leadership position. Right? That's why they want to make sure that they continue to be a leader in the space, right? That's why, okay, for stable coins, right? For NFT, for crypto, right? They want to make sure that they set up the regulation in a way that to make sure that US is continue to be the leader, right? I think that's how I see it as an outsider standpoint, right? But at the same time, I think a lot of other governments, right? They understand that if they have the ambition to become like the next world leader, right? They probably can't disrupt US in the fiat world, no matter how hard they try. For example, I'm based in Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong is part of China, right? But it's not exactly China in a way, right? So somehow you see that the finance policy of China is, they work with a lot of developing countries, right? They give a lot of subsidies because they want those countries to use renminbi, right, as the settlement dollars, right? But no matter how hard they try, it's really hard for an existing business to suddenly change US dollars, right, to renminbi, right? But in Web3, it's like a new dimension of business, right? That's why right now, China is kind of like try to make Hong Kong become like the Web3 hub in the world, right? Because I can't win you in the fiat world, but if I'm advanced enough in the Web3 world, I can probably win. That's why, of course, right now China still bans crypto in some sense, right? But at the same time, it's their concern on the governance and stuff. But at the same time, they understand that the best way to disrupt the whole so-called world leadership is probably Web3. Because if everyone is using stablecoin backed by renminbi, right, backed by US dollars, right? But the thing is, when you launch a stablecoin, you don't have to be the government to launch it, right? I mean, if Hong Kong launch a stablecoin, it is like 1-to-1 backed by US dollars. I think it's still okay because at the end of the day, as long as I have the fiat amount,
they can hold those dollars in their treasury, exactly. Yeah.
And probably be outside of the US, right? Probably China is the government that holds the most US dollars anyway, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense for the Chinese government, for other government, right, to push really hard on crypto, because you can kind of like steal part of the pie from the US that in the business sense, right? Whether it's like, because at the end of the day, when you talk about world leadership, other than the military power, right, it talks about the financial power. I think that makes a lot of sense for for other governments to support the crypto development. Because, okay, imagine like Singapore or London, how can they win over New York, right, in becoming the financial hub? Probably they can win by being more friendly to crypto, right? And that's also the reason why Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, they're pushing so hard and trying to set up regulations that's relatively friendly to crypto business, right? And you can see a lot of the smart leaders and business, they are actually based in Singapore and Hong Kong, right? Before Hong Kong, before the Chinese government kind of like crashed down on crypto, right? Crypto.com, FTX, RIP, right? But FTX, right? Most of the biggest exchange, they started from Hong Kong, right? And when you look at the smart leaders, right, on crypto, right? Vitalik, I think he's living in Singapore, right? Yeah, I mean, those are the things that are actually pretty friendly, right? And when you don't think from the American lens, if you think from the crypto lens, actually Asia is probably the driving force, but also the biggest market. And I think there is a macro reason, also a micro reason, but also for the degen reason, right? So, I mean, this is like really, really weird to me because I always feel like, okay, if you want to launch a tech company, you should be based in the US. And that's something that we didn't do. And that's something that I wouldn't say we regret, but somehow we feel like, okay, this is our disadvantage. But this time in Web3, maybe this is like an advantage, right? Because most of the US projects, right, they can't talk about token, right? Because it's like
the regulators are breathing down our necks. I mean, the SEC is coming for all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but for us, right, we are based in Hong Kong, right? We can launch a token. Yeah, worst case, we do a VPN shit, right? Block the US assets and stuff like that, right? But worst case, I think it's still very safe for me, right? Yeah. So that makes us different. And I think that's the advantage. When you look at the so-called top projects right now, we are one of the only top projects that is based in Asia, right? And
very interesting.
And I don't play the Asian angle a lot. I'm not saying that, oh, I'm Asian, that's why Asians support Asian. We don't do that, right? Because I feel like if we are good, you buy our projects, right? Not because you are an Asian, right? You buy because we are good, right? Yeah. But somehow based in Asia may be actually an advantage down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're making it from a strategic business case, not like an identity case. You're saying,
yes.
We're an interesting one to bet on because of the strategic business advantage we might have.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Well, Ray, thank you so much for coming on and being so generous with your time. We'll obviously have you on again and would love to chat more as you guys evolve as a project and a business, I guess. It feels so silly to use the term project for so many of these. I keep using them, but it's like,
it's okay.
These aren't companies at this point, but, yeah, it's such a blast. And I am dying to get to Hong Kong at some point. So when I do, I will be hitting you up to show me the good spots.
Yeah, sure. Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.